Hello everybody and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips, and I picked a pretty interesting topic, infuriating topic to talk about today. According to many oncologists, some of the most promising cancer treatments that we're offering today involve immunotherapy. And this type of treatment uses substances made by the body or a like substance that's made in a laboratory that resembles cells produced by the body to improve or restore immune function. The idea is if you strengthen immune function, you might strengthen the body's ability to fight the cancer. This idea actually is well over 100 years old, and it was discredited by traditional medicine, largely forgotten, and still largely forgotten in the interest of promoting much more expensive and, one might argue, much less effective treatments. So I'll tell you the story about it. Dr. William Coley was a surgeon at Memorial Hospital in New York during the late 19th century when he made a very curious observation. One of his patients' cancer regressed after developing a severe skin infection, and this patient's prognosis for cancer was not very good. Dr. Coley hypothesized that the fever that the patient developed in response to the infection may have stimulated the body to fight the cancer more effectively. So anxious to learn more, he subsequently treated 10 patients by injecting a bacteria into their tumors. And early on, he discovered some serious problems, one of which was that the results were highly unpredictable. Sometimes the patients failed to develop an infection. Sometimes they developed an infection and the cancer started to regress. And sometimes, unfortunately, the infection killed the patient, which is not an acceptable way to proceed. So to address the inconsistencies, Dr. Coley developed a vaccine that contained two bacteria that had been killed. And the idea was that one bacteria would increase the virulence of the other. And this worked really well because patients developed symptoms of an infection, inflammation, fever, chills, without the risks associated with having an actual infection. And this combination product is what became known as Coley's Toxins. Well, the first patient who ever received Coley's Toxins was a 16-year-old boy with a large abdominal tumor. Dr. Coley injected the toxins every few days, and after 4 months, the tumor was reduced by 80%. By the end of the year, it was almost gone. The patient had no other treatment for cancer and died of a heart attack 26 years later. Dr. Coley treated hundreds of patients during the next few decades, and he wrote dozens of papers, almost 150 of them, which were published in peer-reviewed medical journals documenting his success using Coley's Toxins. He reported that the treatment was most effective for patients with bone and soft tissue sarcomas, many of which were inoperable, less effective for things like melanoma. In 1899, Park Davis began manufacturing the toxins, so a drug company got involved, and other doctors started using them too. Among the doctors who used them were the Mayo brothers, who were the founders of the Mayo Clinic, and another doctor by the name of Henry Meyerding, who was using the toxins along with surgery for bone cancer patients, and he reported that the combination treatment of Coley's Toxins with the surgery was significantly better than just surgery by itself. Coley's Toxins was endorsed by the American Medical Association, and there were several medical textbooks that described the therapy and advocated its use. So with all of that, whatever happened to Coley's Toxins, and why is this treatment not offered to patients now? Well, a whole series of things happened, starting with the fact that James Ewing, a medical doctor, was medical director at Memorial Hospital while Coley was there. And at the time, Dr. Ewing was considered one of the most famous and prestigious pathologists in the United States. So people listened to what he said. He made no secret of the fact that he did not like Coley's treatment, and he favored radiation treatment instead. And at a certain point in time, he issued an edict saying that Coley was no longer to treat patients at Memorial with his product. Excitement over the development and introduction of chemotherapy and increased use of radiation also prevented more widespread use of the toxins. By 1952, Park Davis didn't manufacture the product anymore. In 1963, the FDA issued a ruling making it illegal to use Coley's Toxins for the treatment of cancer in the United States. The American Cancer Society subsequently added Coley's Toxins to its list of, quote, unproven methods of cancer therapy and claimed publicly that the treatment had never helped a single patient, which was patently false. Helen Coley Knotts, who was Dr. Coley's daughter, refused to let her father's work become discredited or forgotten. So she started and went about documenting case reports of patients who were treated by her father and many other doctors, and proved that the treatment worked. She founded the Cancer Research Institute, or CRI, in 1953. Eventually, she was successful in forcing the American Cancer Society to take Coley's toxins off of the list of unproven treatments and quackery. Dr. Coley's son, Bradley Coley, was also a doctor, and he continued to conduct research on his father's therapy. One of his patients, Donald Foley, was 13 years old when he was diagnosed with bone cancer. He came close to having his right arm amputated and would most likely have died had Bradley Coley if he hadn't gotten Coley's toxins from him. He is today one of the last survivors who was treated, the original treatment folks who got Coley's toxins. Well, a long time has passed. And interestingly enough, back to Memorial in New York in 1976, Memorial Sloan Kettering conducted a trial of patients with advanced non-Hodgkin's lymphoma who were randomized to receive Coley's toxins or placebo 5 days before each cycle of chemotherapy. Initially, the intervention group was reportedly doing better than the control group, but the trial was stopped because over time the differences just evaporated. A few other trials were inconclusive. Now, my comment about this is I think that the study design, while it was laudable that Memorial would sort of admit its mistakes, and it's made a bunch of them, by the way. The story of Dr. Ralph Moss in Memorial is, we'll do another video clip on that one, but it was laudable for them to take this on after such an unfortunate experience that Dr. Coley had with the hospital many, many years before. But the study design was one of the reasons I think the trials failed. Institutional review boards often insist that patients receive traditional treatment in addition to experimental therapies because it's considered unethical to withhold treatments that are considered the community standard of care, even if the treatments don't work. Well, think about it this way. In this case, chemotherapy, which has an immunosuppressant effect, most likely counteracted the effect of Coley's toxins, which works by stimulating the immune system to perform better. So one essentially canceled out the other, is what I think. The Cancer Research Institute, Coley's daughter's organization, funded a phase 1 clinical trial just recently in 2007, which was conducted in Frankfurt, Germany. The goal of this study was just to establish safety and to look at dosing requirements. But nonetheless, some impressive results were reported. The toxins induced fever and increased production of cytokines, indicating that an immune response was achieved, and that's what the objective is. That's how the treatment works. One patient with metastatic bladder cancer showed a 50% reduction in tumor size while receiving the toxins. The research group has publicly stated that it would like to conduct more trials, but there are obstacles. It's expensive and difficult to manufacture a drug made with bacteria while adhering to good clinical practice guidelines. Institutional review boards, I mentioned before, are a problem, and they're reluctant to approve a treatment that involves giving toxins at increasing doses until fever is induced and maintained, which can take weeks and sometimes even months at a time. Last but not least, there's always this, and that is the fact that extremely expensive cancer treatments and immunotherapies have invaded the marketplace. They control the marketplace for cancer treatment. I mean, some of these therapies cost as much as over $400,000 a year. And of course, the drug companies and medical institutions have a lot more interest in that type of thing than they do something like this, and that's unfortunate. Well, Coley's toxins has been saved from being forever labeled as mere quackery, but it has joined a very long list of promising treatments for cancer, like dietary intervention and many other alternative treatments that will most likely never become mainstream. In the meantime, drug companies and medical institutions get richer by using more expensive and arguably less effective treatments. So, another infuriating chapter in the search for cancer treatments. And what will most likely happen, in my opinion, is that Coley's toxins will become a treatment available at clinics in Mexico, perhaps in countries like Germany that have a much more practical approach to cancer treatment, and people will have the option to go there. But I don't think that effective cancer treatment should be limited to availability for only people wealthy enough to leave the country to receive them. So I'm hoping that I did a video clip on the right to Right to Try Act, and unfortunately it's for FDA, drugs that are going through the FDA process of approval, and it's very limiting, but it is a step in the right direction, and maybe that's the beginning of loosening the reins for cancer patients to have access to other things. Hopefully this would be one of those other things at some point in time. I'll certainly plan to keep you posted. All right, that's all for today and all for the week as usual. Hit the subscribe button first and then pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it. And I'll be back to you next Tuesday with more news.